Hello and welcome everybody to the Goddess Ritual. This is our very first or our inaugural episode, and I am so glad to have everyone here. As you know, or may not know, you can find us on the Goddess Ritual or at the Goddess Ritual on Instagram. The Goddess Ritual sort of began back in the summer of 2017. Interestingly enough, there was this, as some may remember, this huge and beautiful, beautiful solar eclipse that took place. I do believe it was August 21st. I need to actually check my records, but August 21st of 2017. And that was sort of when, or right around that time, is when the Goddess Ritual emerged. I created the Facebook and Instagram page at that time, and I really was looking to connect, particularly with women, but to connect and to create, to discuss, to percolate on ideas that I had been sifting through and on some of the messages that I had been receiving, observing, some of the beautiful writings, and just really deep learnings and wisdom that had been on my journey and that I had been exploring. And I was hoping to not so much teach or share per se, but find a way to explore collectively and within a circle. And so with that, I started the Goddess Ritual Instagram page, sharing all sorts of beautiful words of wisdom, quotes, images, and anything that sort of had resonance within me, and while also learning from a very diverse community of women who I followed. And so finding ways to spread some of the messages and beautiful words that they were creating and that they were spreading. So this has emerged from a very multifaceted place where I'm hoping to just continue the conversation and again, just advance some of the ideas that we have been receiving and messages that have been really coming in, particularly over the past few years for me, but also I think, and if you're watching in the future or listening in the future to this, we are of course going through some huge shifts on the planet as we enter about the third month of quarantine and sort of our response here in North America at least, but globally, to the COVID pandemic. And so I really thought that if there was a time to use the podcast platform to converse and share, there was no better time. And so I really look forward to delving into all of this really wonderful and abundant wisdom with you all. So thank you for joining. All right, so as we get going on this first and sort of introductory episode, again, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Marie, host of the Goddess Ritual. And I'd really like to start by giving some insight into what can be expected on this podcast, and hopefully get the chance to connect as it goes live with those who would really benefit from hearing some of the messages, but also taking part in this virtual circle and this virtual space. And so, yeah, here is the Goddess Ritual. So what I am hoping to do is share wisdom, share insights, and connect, particularly with women. That's such a huge part of what I feel compelled in my work to focus on, is really connecting with women, to open us up, to allow us the space to collectively remember. There's just so many different areas that we can explore when we come together in circle and in union to create, and therefore to birth. And so a little bit of background in my journey here. Around 2015, I really started feeling the pull towards understanding goddess energy, understanding traditional rituals. I started to recognize an area of my life that wasn't being fulfilled was my connection to spirit, connection to nature. I had lost that at some point during my journey, but then also connection to the divine feminine. And when I look back at some of the journaling that I had begun doing, and I had really disconnected from that. I hadn't taken time to put pen to paper in many years, and that was something that really, really, really gave me a sense of grounding and centeredness. But I had avoided it for a number of years out of embarrassment, out of feeling like it wasn't something that I was supposed to be doing. I remember being a young girl and journaling some of my deep, deep thoughts in my diary. And as I grew fearful of others reading my diary, and I grew very fearful of my own inner thoughts, my inner words, I abandoned my writings. And so it took probably almost 10 or 11 years from the time I stopped as an adolescent or as a teenager for me to really start to feel like it was okay and to give myself the permission to delve back into my writings and my journaling. And so what I found incredibly significant as my journey really started to accelerate, and again, this was probably around the summer of 2015, as my journey began to accelerate quite rapidly towards a yearning for connection, a yearning for deeper understanding, deeper wisdom, deeper knowledge. I started seeking out really wonderful teachings and really wonderful books, podcasts. I remember at the time I had a job where I spent a significant amount of time in my car commuting or driving to different destinations. And previously I would have really just put on music and gone, or opened up my phone and, made a call to a friend so I could talk the entire way. And although those are incredibly wonderful experiences to partake in, my soul was yearning for more. There were a number of things that I had been suppressing throughout some of those really important and formative years as a female. Some of my sexual intimacy, some of my wounds from relationships, some of these really foundational times in a young female's life and transition into sort of that adolescence and young adult life. Some of the different emotions, feelings, experiences, both bad and good, that either I had suppressed or forgotten about, or hadn't thought about, and it started to bubble up, and I couldn't help it. I had to start looking at some of these experiences and exploring them in greater depth. And so my journey was that. It really, although I had always, of course, been on this journey. I mean, we all are. I had been on, my spiritual journey, my path, my however you like to refer to it. But I had always been there. I had always been on that path. But I started to really see myself as being on this journey, and a lot of the understanding and wisdom that had been imparted upon me began to really resonate at a deeper level than it had previously. And so I could feel my heart opening, my mind opening, and my sense of perspective shifting to allow the space to make room for a new leg of my journey. Fast forward a few years, and that's when I really started thinking that it was time to get some of my thoughts, I was going to say on paper, or essentially get them on screen, sharing some of my learnings, some of what I had been percolating and allowing to really pass through me. And again, it was more seeking space to share, seeking space to connect. I remember at one point some of the Google searches, for example, that I was engaging in were things like the divine feminine, the goddess, moon rituals, healing. I was seeking connection with women from a really healthy, supportive, a structure that differed from the world that we were being presented with. I no longer felt this need to, or this deep desire to compete with another woman. Instead, I felt myself wanting to embrace and circle up. I started Googling women's circles local to me, looking for places to go and celebrate in connection with the cycles and the rhythms of the moon. And I found myself drawn to a community that just opened with such warmth and such open arms. It felt like it was a community that had been waiting for me. And by community, I mean a series of online meditations, online women's circles. I found a beautiful podcast, and I don't know, I want to say this was probably in 2016 that I came across it, but it was called The Awakened Goddess. And it completely changed my outlook and my journey. It just completely shifted and gave me the permission to remember some of the deep desires and deep longings and yearnings within my heart, and gave it a sense of permission that I had never previously owned or experienced, or hadn't acknowledged or allowed myself to accept. And it really brought back the childlike desires within myself. I can remember as a child wanting to connect through meditation and not even knowing what meditation, what it was, but just knowing that I wanted to connect with magic, wanting to connect with the unknown. I was creating in ways that I didn't even realize. One of the thoughts I had this morning as I was preparing for this call was, hearkening back to my younger years and my childhood days, when I would simply be experiencing a really beautiful moment, and I would look to create, whether it be a person or maybe through an animal. I would create sort of this imaginary soul to share that experience with. And this was young. Like, I'm thinking, I can remember doing this at 6-7 years old. I remember thinking, oh, this is so lovely. I'm with my mom, my dad, my sibling. This would be so lovely to share with this part of my soul that I'm longing for, whether it be soulmate. Some people talk about twin flames, whatever the case may be. But there was this longing to share that really intimately with another soul. And it led to a creation. I was projecting, I was creating, I was connecting, I was learning and understanding, possibly even just remembering what it feels like to connect at that really deep soul level. And so as I continued, just fast forward back to, again, my rapid ascension or rapid transition down my spiritual journey in my later 20s and early 30s, I really started to remember that experience as a child and remember how nourishing that felt, and remember how liberating and how fearless I was in creating and projecting into my existence, into my sort of holographic field, what I was hoping to experience. And so for me, I would really like to, on this podcast, between my sharing experiences that are my own and then indulging in guests who can really nourish and provide great depth to the conversation and bring greater and richer wisdom to the conversations, I hope to find a balance where we can harmoniously share safely and allow our inner desires, whether it be from childhood, whether it be from adulthood, whether it be from intimacy, connection, love, wherever we're hoping to create and continue to weave the web. I'm hoping that this podcast will add to the experience of the listeners, as I hope it will also add to my own experience. So thank you so much. I look forward to bringing you all on this journey and experiencing it with you. So I look forward to furthering our time together on the Goddess Ritual. Thank you all for joining us on our first podcast of the Goddess Ritual. If there are topics that are near and dear to your hearts, or areas that you really feel compelled to explore and you would love to hear, or have a suggestion for a guest that we can include on this platform, I would love to hear from you. Please either send us an email at thegoddessritual@gmail.com or a private message on our Instagram page. We look forward to hearing from the entire community and network of listeners, and we hope to bring the type of content you would like to hear. Thanks, and have a wonderful day.